last week. So subqueries. We finished what? Scalar subquery. So any doubts until now? Did you guys practice that document? Did you find anything difficult? Anything that you don't understand?
Yeah, there are many queries which I am not able to understand.
Okay.
Few queries I was not able to execute. Like I don't know how to write. Few queries.
How to write in the sense?
I didn't get the idea. They're asking find the nth record, like the nth record of a table without using the group by on the row ID.
How do we do it?
From the form.
10th record. Let's try and see. Select star from EMP. What is the 10th record here? This is the 10th record, right? So we need to display this record. How do we do it? I believe I've talked about a scenario like this. Select star from EMP where row num less than 11. Select star from EMP where row num less than 10. That is the 10th record.
No, without using the row now.
Row ID, right? That's what you said. This is not row ID. If this is not what you want, tell me another way. How do you do it? Rank. Row number. You'll get a number and then pick the record that is. So, make sense? This one? So I believe last week, if I remember correctly, I asked you guys a question to solve something. You guys have an answer?
Yeah.
Everybody? Why? You have 1 week of time. You could refer to Google. You could ask somebody.
I wasn't here, so I wasn't here, sir.
You wasn't what?
I wasn't here, so last time.
You wasn't here Sunday, okay. What's the answer? Can somebody tell me? What was the question first of all? I don't remember. What is that question? Okay.
And one row.
Okay, tell me the query.
Display a table which has
Query.
Again select. Subquery. Select in subquery, select max cell from employee table. Employee. Where department number is equal to 10 as 10. Is equal to 10 and 10. And repeat the same subqueries for 20, 30. And also you can do from equal to row number equal to 1.
I used case.
Case why?
I was going around.
Did you get the answer?
I got the
Same answer? Tell me the query. Want to look at it?
Just, I'm just starting. It didn't work, so I'm just restarting.
Whenever you're done, sure, tell me. Let's start with other set of subquery. The question here is, I want to display 3 rows. Their column names are 10, 20 and 30, and in each of the row, each of the column, I need to have the maximum salary of that respective department. So if I'm displaying department number 10, I need to have the data for department number 10's max salary in that particular column. Next, we just done with scalar subquery, right? The next form of subquery that we have is from, so this is called inline view subquery. So if you write a subquery in from clause, then it's called inline view subquery. Okay, so what do I mean by writing a query in from clause? Let's start with the requirement. That way it will be easy for us to understand what we or why we do it. I have a requirement where I want to display, or say display all the details of an employee who has the highest salary in the EMP. Not this requirement. This can be used for subqueries, but display all the let's take your requirement, your 10th record. Display the details of employee from the EMP table display all the details of the 10th employee from the EMP table Can you guys understand this question first of all? Display all the details of the 10th highest salaried employee from the EMP table. What does that mean?
Sort the data.
Ascending.
So what are we doing here first of all?
Find people who have the salary, highest salaries.
In ascending order.
In the
Okay.
order. And then
10th highest salary, right? So it is in descending order. It should be in descending order, right? Highest salary. What is highest salary? If you do descending, that's how you get the highest salary, right?
Yeah.
Next thing is you have to find the 10th. How do I get the number 10? Row num gives you what? Row ID or that row number, whatever row that particular number is assigned to, right? Is that right? So whatever number that row is assigned to, that is called a row number. Make sense?
We can't use the row number for finding the 10th record.
I'm not finding 10th record here. I changed the requirement a little bit. 10th highest salaried employee. I changed little bit your requirement. It's not the exact requirement that I'm using.
Rank or something?
What is it?
Rank.
Can we get 10th in rank?
Yeah, when you order by salary and descending order,
Okay.
mention
What if we have a duplicate? Can we get the 10th?
District.
10th rank.
yes.
10th rank doesn't skip any duplicates. Right? So how do we first thing is display the rank. Select. Display all the details. Yes? I'll put E dot star from EMPE. That gives me all the details. Comma. What is that? We have to assign the rank now to each row to see what is the 10th row. So if we go down, this is the 10th highest salary in employee table. Is that right? Am I done with my requirement? What did I ask?
10th highest salary. But you want to display only 10th, right?
I want to display only 10th.
When row number is equal to, no, you can't do it.
So what if you want to go by job also, then it's a different requirement. Because here you're not looking at job, you're just looking at the salary.
Yes. This was my question, so I'm writing a query based on this question. Where does job come from? Tell me, what should we do? Here, I assign rank. Totally fine. I know that this is my 10th record. 10th highest salary record in the employee table. But as per the requirement, what is it? I need to display only the 10th highest salary employee details. But I'm displaying all the 14 records here. There are two things here. Display all the details of 10th highest. Using this query, I know which is the 10th record, 10th highest record in the employee table. Yes? Now, next part is I need to display all the details of that employee. I know this query gives me every single record, but I need to display only 10th record.
Where 10th rank equal to 10.
Where 10th rank equal to 10? Where? Here? Is that what you want? You don't know. How can you guess? I named it as RK. Alias name for this query. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can I use RK here? RK is an invalid identifier. Why?
So they're exceeding the entire 20 accounts. So first, only if
But you have to use order by salary descending equal to.
Where do I need to put order by?
Instead of RK, you have to do the whole thing, the 10th rank of overall numbers. It should be in parentheses.
These functions can only be used in select statement. You cannot use these functions here. So there is no way that you can get it with what you learned until now. What did I say? Every time you write something in select statement, that is only developed for that particular query. Yes? It only shows in the result set. It does not store in the backend. It's not stored back in the database, right? Is that clear, everybody? First of all, Now, this column, whatever I've displayed, this is the one that gives me the 10th highest salary. Yes? Everybody, is that clear? Did I store this anywhere? This column?
No.
As I just said, select query, when I have something here in the select statement, if I am writing a function and coming up with an additional column that is not in the table, that is still not stored back in the database. It's still only sitting there for that particular query. If I run it, only then I see that column. If I don't run it, I do not have that column stored back in the database. Okay? Is that clear? Now, so if it's not stored back in the database, what are the columns that we always pull when in the where clause? Everything that is from database or everything that is from that particular table will be called to filter. Is that right? Whenever I'm filtering, I'm doing EMP number or E name, some column that is sitting already in the EMP table. That is what I'm trying to filter it on. Yes? But this column is not stored in the table. There is no way that you can apply a filter on this column. Okay? With our regular method. Now, the additional thing that we're going to learn, or the thing that we are just saying is, we are learning inline view subquery, where a subquery, a query is placed inside from clause. What are we storing in from clause? What do we write in from clause?
Location.
Tables. Table information, right? So if I put a query in from clause, what do you think it becomes? A temporary table for that query? A temporary table, a temp table for that query. Does it make sense? If I put anything that I put in from clause is table. So if I put a query in from clause, the result set that I'm getting will be considered as a temp table for that query. Make sense? What am I saying here? Whatever I put here in from clause is always a table. So instead of giving the table name directly, which is stored back in the database, I'm going to give this query completely. What does this query result in? This data. Yes? So if I put the data that I'm getting here in this query into from clause, this data that I have will be the temporary table for that particular query. Does it make sense? Is that concept clear? So I'll keep this aside for now. I'll write select star from table. This is where we give the table information. Agree? So here, either we can give a table that is already stored back in the database, or another query that results in some data. So I'm going to copy this query, which is giving me this data. Yes? I'm going to put that in there.
So it's always best to break the query and make initial statements and then try to learn.
When you're learning, yes, this is the way you have to do it. When you have a requirement, there is no way that you can write all. There are, I've seen subqueries where select, inside select, inside select, inside select, inside select. That's how big subqueries will be. Not the queries that you write, but when you execute any BI report tools, any automated tools that you have, right? So when you pull up columns, it becomes that many subqueries. When you write queries, you try to make it as simple as possible manually, but when the computers write a SQL code, when you take a look at it, they'll be pretty complex. So
So how do you approach the requirement?
split it. Now that's why I showed you this example. I have two requirements here. One is displaying the rank to be 10 and then details of that rank. So I just came up with a query where it gives me every single rank, right? So this query gives me this data where I assign a rank to every single record based on highest salary. Yes? After I assign that, now I need to filter on only the 10th record, and there is no way that by running this query I can filter it on, because this data is not in our table. Yes? If this data is part of the table, then we can always filter that column. Is that right? Is that right? That is what I'm trying to do here. I'm making this column as part of the table. So this query gives me this data. Yes? So if I run this query completely, the data that we have in here, can we filter it on any column that we have here? Right? Because I'm not applying a from clause inside. I'm applying a from clause, a where clause outside. Now this will become the table for me. The data in here is my table data. Is that right? Everybody, is that clear? The query inside here results in this data, and this data is the data that I'm using for my outer query. How many columns do I have now in this table? 9 columns. We added a column RK. Yes? So I'm going to name whatever the way this column will, I'm going to name it something called A, sum A. So how do I specify a column? A dot emp number, A dot ename, A dot rk, right? Similarly, the way I specified here, E dot emp name, that's how we specify, right? I have alias name for this query so that I do not use this query every time in my statement. So all I say is A dot, what is the requirement? RK, right? This one, this result is stored in column RK is equal to 10. Let's run this. I'm going to display only data that is related to make sense? Everybody? So we are using a query inside from clause now. So this type of queries are called inline view subqueries.
There is no restriction button where you want to write table from.
Now, so this is clear, right? And until here it's clear. Now I'll put A dot emp number, A dot ename. I display everything happily. Agree? If I put E dot job, it will throw an error because my table is here. My table name, alias name is A, and all the data inside here is acting as a table. This EMPE doesn't work anymore in the outside query. Outside query is only based on table A. And what does table A has? All the 8 columns from employee table and this column. And E dot doesn't make any sense to it. So if I put A dot, it's going to give me the job. Is that clear? Now let's add some more stuff to it. Instead of E dot start, I'm going to write the column names. E dot ename, comma, E dot emp number, E dot job, E dot sal, E dot department number. Let's run this. Still working fine, right? A dot hire date. It's throwing an error. Why?
Because it's not picking up
I'm trying to display A dot hire date. Here I removed A dot star and I manually inserted whatever the columns that I'm displaying in this query, and I'm trying to display in the outer query A dot hire date. When I do this, it's throwing me an error saying that A dot hire date is an invalid identifier. So what do I mean by that is, when I run this query, what did I say? Whatever data that I'm getting in that result set, that is acting as a table. Yes? When I run this, do I see any column that is related to hire date? No. because I'm pulling up only these 5 columns and 6th column. Agree? When I have the data of this query stored it like this, that is my table. I'm not going to EMP table anymore. Whatever this query results in, that is my table data. That is my temporary table for that query. Is that clear? So whatever columns that you pick here, that is your column information that you'll be using for A. Those are only the columns. There might be hundreds of other columns in employee table, but you're not bothered about those columns because you're working with only these columns here. Make sense?
That means in the select statement you can only write the e-name, e-employee, not the A.
Where, in which select statement?
No, you said you got an error message with the A, the select A.
Hmm?
So that's wrong. So it needs to be EMP, EMP.
No. What I'm trying to say is the data. When I run this query, what is the data that I'm getting? This.
The,
So this is my temporary table now for the outer query.
right.
Does this column has hire date? Does this table has hire date? That's why it's not being pulled. So if I run this, it will not display any hire date because the inner query doesn't display any hire date. If I add up hire date to this one, to this list, the reason it was displaying every single column because I displayed star initially. So all the columns will be displayed. Now I'm specifically displaying one column at a time just to show that how it works. Now this query, if I open up, will result in e-name, EMP number, job, salary, department number, hire date and rank. If I run it, now it will pick up the hire date because hire date is picked inside the inside query. Make sense? Is that clear? So these are the type of inline view subqueries that you'll be playing with. Okay? Now can we apply joins to this? We talked about joins already, right? Everybody clear about join? I need to apply inner join to this table. Can I do it first of all? Can I do a inner join
Yes.
to inline view subqueries? The answer is yes, and that is correct. How do we do it? Tell me a inner join query to join EMP table and department table.
Where
This is the query that gives me what? Joins. It's joining two tables, EMP table and department table, right? And we are giving columns from here, right? The column, I mean the relationship between both the tables is being specified here. Now, how do we do here? We have some query here. I'll copy this. Instead of EMP, if I can replace this query and name this A and this as A. What did I do here? Everybody understood? I have this one, this query, right? This runs completely fine. Now instead of EMP table, all I'm replacing is a table, right? This is what? A table for me. I know it's a query, but it's a table for me when I'm writing it in from class. Yes? So similarly, I'm replacing this EMP table with another new table, that is this. Did anything else change in the query? Everything else is same. Is that right? We have the inner join, we have the other table. So that's only thing that we need to look for is the columns that you are joining here. So are we pulling up department table here? Yes, we are pulling up department table. right? So this query will work. You're getting all the 14 rows. So there is no difference between a regular inner join and having an inner join with a inline view subquery. Okay, all you're replacing is just the table name. Just think of that you're replacing the table name. So you can make a join between EMP table and department table, right? You can make a join between EMP table and sal grade table. You can make a join between all the three tables together. Similarly, if you want to add another table, replace one of the column, one of the table name, and replace that with this query. Make sense? So all you're trying to do is just replacing the table name, but you're not replacing it as with the table name, but with a query. So whatever result set that you get in that query, that will join now to the other table. Now these type of queries are called inline view subqueries. Any doubt? Fine? Done? Now, so that finishes inline view subquery and scalar subqueries. Fine. The next and last type of subquery that we have is writing a subquery in where clause. And this is a typical and most used thing when you go to the jobs. And scalar subquery, it's pretty rare that we use. It's just for displaying purposes. If you want to compare it with some other values, you'll do it. You don't generally get those type of requirements, but inline view, yes, you use it because you need to make some joins depending on specific columns and specific filters. So this is pretty useful in inline view, and the most generally used subqueries are written in where clause. Okay, so we'll try to come up with a requirement the same way we came with inline view. So I have a requirement here where we'll say display all the details of employee or employees who has the highest salary in the employee table. How many requirements do we have here? 2. What are the requirements?
Display the high salary and display all the details.
To display the highest salary and to display the all the details. Can we start writing the query? First we'll start with the second requirement, displaying the highest salary. How do we do it? Select max sal from EMP. This will give us the highest salary. I also need to display all the details. How do I do it?
Use a join.
Join, no. What happens if I put EMP number here?
Where
Does it work first of all? It's not a group function, singular function. It's a group function. So there is no way that you can have a column here. If you want to have a column here, you have to put that in group by clause. If I put it here, then it's gonna group by employee number and employee number is not repeated, so we're going to get all the 14 records. Yes? And how do I display all the details? All these days I'm just displaying maximum salary. We've did some other ways to display maximum salary with all the details in scalar subquery, where we did select e dot star comma select max sal from EMP. This displays all the 14 records and maximum salary next to column, but that's not what I want. I want to display only column, only rows or row which has the highest salary in the employee table. This gives me highest salary. But it doesn't give me the details, right?
So in where clause you can give some.
So now we have to use a concept of subquery in where clause. So let me keep this aside for now. This one gives me 5,000, right? Forget about group functions, forget about everything. If the max salary in the employee table is 5,000, if I know that number, how do I write a query? To display all the details of that employee.
Then start from EMP where salary.
Did you guys get my question? I want to display all the details of the employees who have salary to be 5,000 because I know that that is the maximum salary. Simple question. Is that right? Because I know the maximum salary is 5,000. Yes? How are we getting this value?
For that for
This query? Right? Instead of writing it manually, can I replace this with this query? That is your subquery. Make sense? So I did it in multiple steps here. First I came up with a query where it gives me the maximum salary. I found out that to be 5,000. Next, I'm trying to display all the details of the employee table. This is the query where salary is equal to 5,000, right? So now I know that this query gives me all the details. This value I've got it from this query. So all I need to do is, if I can replace this value with this query, because I'm getting the same value out of that query, I'm not generalizing it. There can be any number of records and this query will work for it. This query will work for only salary is equal to 5,000. What if there is a new record inserted into the table with salary 6,000? I need to run this query again, then come and change this value, right? Instead of doing that, if I write a query, it should be worked for every single scenario, every single type of data. Having a query in where clause is called a subquery. Make sense? Was that easy? Everybody, is that clear? So let's make the requirement a little more complex. It was simple right now. So display I'm going to add some more stuff to this same requirement. Who has the highest salary in the employee table in their respective departments. How many records do we get? How many requirements do we have here? Tell me the query the way. Don't directly write this one. Let's go step by step. Help me find write the query.
For highest salary, it's select max salary,
Select max cell from EMP.
group or restricted record,
Group by department.
Group by department number. This query gives me maximum salaries in each department. Is that right? Everybody. These three are the values. I'm gonna follow the same way. Now tell me a query to display all the details based on these values.
The salary is equal to the subquery minus salaries.
Based on these values. Forget about subqueries.
Okay.
How do I write a query? How did I write this one?
Select max of salary.
Forget about max of sal. I have these values.
Group by
That is the details of employee in department number 30. Yes? This is just one record. What if I have multiple records that I need to equate? In
max
2850, comma 3000, 5000. Forget about subqueries. I just want a query that displays values or details of these numbers. That is what I'm trying to ask. Is that right? Is this query correct?
Yes.
Is it giving me all the details that I want as per the requirement? How am I getting these values?
From the max.
Using the above query. Right? These are the values that I have that I got from this query. That is what I'm equating here. Instead of manually equating those values, if I can replace that with this query, I should get the same result.
Hard coding it. That way you don't hard code it, it's like, it becomes more generalized, right? If the values change also.
That's why I'm doing it. This one. Yeah.
So,
Same output. Now this is a generalized query. It can be applied to any data. This can only apply to until the value. These are the values which are the highest in their department. Does it make sense? This one? Yes? No?
Yes.
Done? Copying? Executing? Over? What if I display department number next to it? How many values are we getting? 2 columns and 3 rows, right? Is this output equal to this? No, we are adding a column here. Here we are getting only one column, here we are getting multiple columns, right? Now, if I replace this query, whatever I have here, and add department number next to it. That is the data that we have. Fine. Can we equate it here?
Yes. Because the EMP table has the proper name.
Too many values. How many queries? How many columns are you equating it with the output? What is the output that we are getting here? 2 columns. How many are you equating it with? 1 column. That's why it will throw an error. Okay. If you are equating multiple columns in the inside query, you have to equate multiple columns in the outside query. Make sense? In the same order. First we have department number, second we have salary. Yes? So if I can put here department number, comma salary, it will give you the same result.
So the main query outside the column should be equal to subquery inside.
Yes. That is our query. So I have a question for you guys here. Is there a relationship between the inner query and outer query here?
No.
What do I mean by that is can I run the inner query independently by its own? That is my question. Can I run this automatically? Will it run? It will run. Can I run this outer query?
Yes.
It runs. Except the relationship that I'm specifying here in where clause, there is no other specific relationship between the inner table and the outer table. Right? The inner table and the outer table doesn't have any specific relationship except this one. Right? And this one I'm specifying it in where clause. Whatever values that I'm getting here, I'm trying to look for those values in that column, in the outer query. Is that right? That is the only filter condition that I'm specifying. There is no specific relationship between the outer table and inner table. Right? So these type of queries are called the regular subqueries. This one. Until now, whatever we discussed, all the queries doesn't have any relationship with the outer queries. Right? They can always run independently. I can repeat that again. When I run this, there is no error. It runs and shows the data. I can go to from clause and I select this and run it. It runs totally fine. Right? So all the queries, subqueries that I'm putting in are independent from the outer queries until now. Right? So if we have a relationship between inner query and outer query, that's the class. If we have a relationship between inner query and outer query, then it's called a correlated subquery. This is the last type. Okay, correlated subquery. This will have a relationship between inner query and outer query. Let's start writing it and see how it changes. So everybody understood this query, right? Where I used a group by statement to get multiple records and then equated it this way, right? I'm going to write the above query using correlator subquery method. See how it changes. Select start from EMP where E dot sal in select star from EMP D where E dot EMP number D dot sal, right? We are equating these values, and E dot let me max sal, right? Max of D dot sal from EMP D. So if I do this, it's giving me, it's the same query that I've written before. I just added alias namespace. There is no other difference until now, right? If I want to group by on a specific column, what did I do until now? I added a group by statement here and then equated it, right? Now the difference that it makes here is I can put where E dot, what is the column? Department number is equal to D dot department number. I'm creating a relationship between the department number in the inside table with the department number in the outside table. Okay, let me run this and see first of all it works. It works. It shows me 4 rows, and those were the records that we were getting when I applied this condition. Four records, right? Using group by condition. The data is completely same that I have it here. But the difference here is, if I run this query by its own, it's going to show me an error saying that E dot department number is an invalid identifier, because this E dot department number is coming from a outer query, right? So whenever we want to create a group by condition, this is another way where we could create a group by condition using correlator subquery. If I want to create a display the data based on max of job, max salary, group by job, what do? I can just go here, replace this with job, job, and job, right? Those 3 places, if I replace it with job, I'm going to display all the employees who have highest salaries in their respective jobs. Make sense? Or I could use the correlator subquery, just replace this with job. These are all the employees who have highest salaries in their respective job groups. So subqueries in which the correlator subqueries are always explained as every record in outer query will run and execute inside the inner query and then come back and gives the result. Okay, and every query, that is the inner query and outer query, will always have a relationship between them. So this is a relationship. This is how we specify the relationship between an inner query and an outer query. Make sense? Everybody? So all I'm trying to do by specifying this relationship is giving the group by condition in another way. The ETL. So what is ETL? What is the full form of ETL? Extract, transform, load. This is what we do as part of ETL or ETL. And ETL is a process. It's not a tool. Let me make it straight. ETL is a process, and there are a bunch of tools out there in the market which runs this process. One of the major tools and market leader, industry leader, is Informatica. And this is the tool that we're going to use to learn the ETL process. Informatica is a tool which runs the ETL process. Now, I believe I've talked about this in the first class, but data is moved from one place to another place, which in turn I can also call it as moved from source to target. So always the data is extracted from source and loaded to target. Okay? So if you're extracting some data from one place, that is called source. Loading it in one place, that is called target. So that is what we do on the data, and that process which moves the data from one place to another place is done by ETL. That process is called ETL process. Now, in order to understand the ETL process and where we apply this ETL process, there are two systems that we need to understand. One is called OLTP system and one is called OLAP system. I'll explain in simple words what these are. If you want exact definitions, I can give you, but OLTP systems is called online transaction processing. Online analytical processing. There are two types of processing systems. One are called OLTP systems and one are called OLAP. These are the full forms of it. In order to understand this stuff, I'm going to give you guys some examples. So let's take a bank, let's say debit card. Okay, you go to an ATM, extract some money, go back home and open up the statement, online portal, to check your balance. Do you see the transaction that you just made back in the statement instantly? Yes, we do. We see that statement, transaction that you make of extracting some money back in your online portal instantly. Is that right? Take any bank. They should be instant, at least in US.
Even in
Okay? When you debit some money, when you extract some money from one of the ATM machines, go back to your online statement, you will see that transaction being loaded instantly. What does a transaction has details? It will have probably I can say date, time, amount, location, where you pick it from. That's it, right? Probably a transaction ID. Right? These are all the details that you'll have. Any doubts until now? Does anybody don't know this process? Okay. Now, we get all these details. So even here, there is a data movement. When I say data movement, I go to ATM, I extract money. There is a computer in there, right? Which lets you extract the money. So that when you make a transaction, you extracted, let's say, $500 from your account, from your debit card. So when you extract, it's going to check back from the database that if you have that amount or not. First of all, it will verify if you have $500 in your account. If you have that amount, then it will give you $500. After you take that $500, it will create a row, an entry in your statement saying that you extracted this much money at that particular date, time, amount, and location. Right? It will insert a record into the database. Is that right? Because all your reporting application, whatever you're seeing in your online web portal, that this is your transaction, is being pulling back from the database. Is that right? Whenever you're pulling data, it has to be pulled from a database. Are you connected to an ATM machine? No, right? You're not connected to ATM machine. You're connected to your bank system. So there are a bunch of stuff here where let me open up a Paint document. I want to paint something.
This would be in yellow.
Yes. Let's say this is our ATM machine. From this, and you are sitting here in your home. From your home machine, you are trying to access let me put capital 1 portal. Okay, online portal. Fine. Now, this will link to Capital One database. So let me just, so when you make a transaction, it will load your transaction into this Capital One's database, and this Capital One database is linked to your online portal. Right? You are from your home PC, are you directly going here or here? To the portal, online portal, right? So I'm going to open up this one and look at all my transactions in the website they give to access my online account, right? Now let's say you went to another ATM. You extracted some money from a different ATM. Is it linked directly to the online portal or it goes here? It again goes to the database. Does this change? No. I can have any number of ATMs everything will link to one database. Yes?
If it's not the same bank, say Capital One.
I'm talking about Capital One here,
Yeah, I mean, it is.
right?
No, I mean, I just wanted to know that ATMs, you can use another ATM to take out money, and then it's a ATM, but it's not Capital One ATM, say.
Yeah, it goes to whatever bank
It still goes to the database direct, or it goes to the bank and then goes to the database?
probably goes to the bank, and it depends on the rules how they return.
It goes to a common.
It goes to
exchange
whatever
system from
bank they have, right? So from here it will go to Capital One. If it's not the Capital One's card, it goes to wherever it goes. If it's a Bank of America credit card, it goes to that transaction.
When they are going to take ATM using, they are going that ATM.
See, generally what it happens is I believe it depends on the credit card or the debit card. So Capital One has only a bunch of series. No credit card numbers will be same. Capital One have a different credit card number. One credit card number cannot be same for multiple carriers, as of I know. Right. So if I'm putting up an account, I believe there will be a unique system to identify every different credit card that is available out there. So when I insert a credit card in one of the applications, it automatically recognizes. So whenever you put something, right, do you extract money from your Capital One or your bank account directly?
Extract money from?
So let's say I'll take your same example. I go to a Capital One ATM. I put in a Bank of America debit card, right? When I put in there, what does it do? What is it going to ask for? PIN? No, I'm asking what the steps, what it does.
It's normally it's asked for the payment methods. I don't think it allows you to deposit. It just
No,
allows you to extract.
don't
money.
worry. I'm extracting money. I put my debit card.
Okay. It asks for the PIN.
I put in the PIN. It should activate. If it's valid. So where is it actually validating it with?
I mean, if it's Visa, I think it validates with Visa.
You're missing the point here.
Validating with Bank of America database.
Or let's pick a 7-Eleven one, which doesn't even have for anyone. This is not even Capital One, not Bank of America. Some random ATM in one of the gas stations. So I go here, I try to extract money from this one. It's going to ask for PIN, right? So when it asks for PIN, does it activate with, do we have data in 7-Eleven? It links to your banking system. So ATMs work that way. Anytime you put any debit card, it links back to your banking application. So I believe there is a centralized place where every single credit card is stored.
There must be a third party thing, because what happens is if you're trying to withdraw with the Bank of America card from a Capital One ATM, what happens is Capital One, the system in Capital One will recognize that this number does not belong to them. So what happens is it will route to that third party. And the third party will have in its database whichever bank these series belong to. So that will route it to Bank of America.
So I believe that is all the ATM system works. That's how the ATM systems work. The ATM machine, whatever you have,
I think the first four, that I know it links to the bank, the first 4 digits of the credit card number.
so there is something called routing number. So every bank's routing number is different. It goes by routing numbers. So whenever you try to link any online accounts, you're trying to pay any bills, the first thing that you're going to ask is routing number and the account number. So routing number is what drives what bank that is.
That's the unique identifier.
So I'm not trying to explain banking application here. If I make a transaction in a ATM. If it's, let's say everything is of Capital One, you can make it even 7-Eleven. Even then it goes to the Capital One database if it's a Capital One credit card or debit card. Make sense? So all these different transactions that I'm getting from all the different places, everything is going and storing in one single place, right? And all those things are consolidated into my statement. If one person does all the transactions from these different places, it can be ATM, it can be a grocery store, it can be any stuff. Everything goes to one single database, and from here we're gonna downstream the data into the online portal, right? So data flows that way. Starts from here and shows up in your online portal. Does it make sense? So this is all instant movement. Data moves instantly. Right at that particular second, it goes back into the database. Right? This type of processing is called online transaction processing. Instant processing. When you have some data that you, or when you have a transaction that you done at one of the stores, it goes back into your statement instantly.
Like even if you buy something like
Anything. These days, all the credit cards, everything shows all your transactions pretty instantly. Okay, so those type of transactions that shows instantly are part of OLTP systems. Any system that you see in your grocery store, whenever you swipe your credit card, any systems that you see in your gas stations, every single thing is a OLTP system. It has to move the data instantly back into the database.
Basically real-time.
Real-time data. And that data will have a lot of details and redundant data. I mean, a lot of repeated data. That's because, let's say I take this ATM example. Let's say in a day, I went to ATM 5 times. Nothing else changes except the transaction ID, time, and the amount. Is that right? All the other things, location, everything is same. Everything is a repeated data. So that is one example. Another example of repeated data is, let's say I went to a shop where I'm buying some, let's say, clothes or something. Every day I went to a shop and bought something. At the end of the month I got a statement. So I'll see every day a transaction, the amount that I spent on that particular item in detail. So if you look at the statement, you can figure out $20 I spent on movies, $20 I spent on a particular, or if you take a bill, your grocery bill, you will see every single item that you spent, right? Every single item you can see and the amount that you spent on it. Single item that you see and spent on it. So if you want to return something, can you go back and return it? Yes, if you have the bill, you can always return it, right? Let's say you have that bill, you bought something, after 1 year you go back, show that bill, can you return it? Let's say it's still in warranty. It's still in warranty, those data is valid, you can still return it if the company's policies accepts it, right? Now, for example, the data. So after 1 year, if I go back and look up for this record, it should still be available. Only then I can look up and return that value, right? What are the details that I should have? For a single bill, let's say I have spent $400. So I have, let's say, 5 dresses in it, which comes up to $400. Okay. So after 1 year, I go back, I want to return one of the dress. If I show the bill of this 400 and that dress that I have with all the barcodes and everything, I should be able to return it. Yes? how does the computer recognize that that dress is still bought in that store and it's part of that bill? We have to have that data stored still in the system. Is that right? So if we have this bill details stored in the system, item level details. Bill is of $400 and I have 5 items in there, and 5 items, each item's barcode is this. If it is stored in that detail, yes, they can do it. If it's not stored in that detail, is there a way that I could retrieve that record? Let's say, for example, they truncated the data of the detailed information. Can I remove it? Can I replace that item? I cannot do it, right? Because the data is already deleted. So in OLTP systems, the data will be item level details. If I have this $400 bill, I have 5 dresses that I bought in that $400, right? I have 5 items. That is called item. Okay. So I have item level details stored in my OLTP system. So that is from a customer's point of view, that they need to have all that item level details stored for a long time. Because if you want to return, they can always go back and return it. Yes? Now let's look at this from a company's perspective. Does the company need that data, that detailed information? See, when there's one bill has 5 items, 5 barcodes, each item's price. There are a bunch of other columns that might be populated based on that particular item. Is that right? Those particular items. So this is just one bill that we are using to populate those many columns. Consider if it have millions and millions of records. It's a lot of data. Yes? There is no way that I'm going to store that high amount of item level details back in the database for a long time. It's a waste of time and money for the company to maintain that many databases, that many servers in order to extract. Because anytime you come in, you have to show that record. So that's why if you'd see, most of the times companies or any shops, you will see only 30-day return policy or 15-day return policy. Because after 15 days, they're going to delete all that data. Okay. The reason, because all that the company needs is how much they spent on dresses in the month of March, how much they spent on electronics in the month of March. They don't need item level details. If you're the CEO of the company, all you need is what is the profit or what is the loss. Do you need item level details? How many dresses I've sent, how many TVs? They don't. I mean, up to a certain level they're going to check it, but not in every bill how many items they bought. They don't need that item level details. Is that right?
They will store it in the inventory itself rather than store it.
Yeah. So all they do is they truncate the data and store aggregated information. Aggregate information. The reason why they store aggregate information is to do analytical processing, analysis of the product, future predictions. So why do they store all this data? To predict the future, right? Why do they need? If they already sold it, they don't even need the data, right? If they're storing something out there in the database, they always have a reason for it. They don't store nothing for no reason. Okay, so they're storing some data back in the database. So all they're trying to do is, so this item level details that particular guy has spent these many, he bought these many items to bill up $400. All the item level details will be deleted. All they try to do is, let's say for example, there are 50 people and there are around 100 bills, detailed bills for that 50 people. On an average, one person has 2 bills, right? Is that right? Yes or no? There are 50 people in the database. For example, a company's database has 50 people and they have 100 detailed bills that has been stored in the database. So on an average, one person has 2 bills. So at the end of, so this is transaction level data, OLTP system data, right? That has been stored. Now what the company does is they'll move this data, truncate everything, and come up with just 50 people, 50 records. And each record will consolidate the amount that he spent. Make sense? Yes? No? Not clear? Tell me if it's not clear. I'm going to explain again. So that detailed information has been truncated and aggregated into one record. So when they move the data from OLTP systems to this aggregated information, this is called a OLAP system. It's an online analytical processing. So the data that we have in OLTP systems are used for analytical purpose.
So you take the data from the OLTP system and then you move it to OLAP and then you analyze and you get what you get.
Reports that we want based on OLAP system data.
So truncating and aggregating sounds like the process is.
Most of the time that's what happens. Truncates, I mean all the unwanted data will be truncated and based on, so first of all they aggregate the data based on what we have. Once the aggregation is done, they truncate all the unwanted data.
And then they run the BI reports on it. And then they run the
They run the BI reports, yes. Now, what do you get? What is a warehouse in general? Storage unit, right? Right? What do they have in warehouse? All the inventory, previous inventory that is left out, then current inventory, all the future the items that they want to have, everything will be stored in that warehouse, right? Similarly, there is a term called data warehouse where they store all the historical data, everything. So all your analysis that you see, all the future predictions, anything that happens will be based on the data warehouse. So the data in data warehouse is of OLAP system. Data warehouse is a place where you have all the historical data, right? When it moves from here to here, what happens? I'm saying that it's aggregated data, right? All the data will be aggregated out here. It will be processed and stored in OLAP systems. Here, they don't have any process. Whatever we have in the live data, they'll directly stored in the OLTP systems. But they move the data from OLTP to OLAP systems, all the data will be aggregated data. Is that right? Or some type of processed data. They don't have detailed information in OLAP systems. So these type of systems are something called, can we relate that to historical data? Does historical data have detailed information? No, they don't have. They have aggregated information, historical data. Historical data is 1960. Let's say somebody bought something in 1960. Do you care about it? No. They just need what was the sales in 1960. Total number of sales. That is what they want. Who bought what? They don't care. So that is something called a historical data. Everything that is stored from day one of the company. So data warehouse is a place where they store all these historical data. Does it make sense? And the data will be in OLAP format. This one. So all your projects that you're going to go, if you are an ETL tester, is moving the data from OLTP systems to OLAP systems. that is moving from a transactional database to data warehouse. All the data from these systems will be loaded into data warehouse. To do this, we run ETL processes. The major process of ETL is based on the workflow, the data movement flow from transactional database to data warehouse. Because, as I said, when we move data from OLTP systems to OLAP systems, we remove a lot of data, we process a lot of data, and then store it in OLAP systems. Is that right? I've been saying that since last 10 minutes. So when I'm saying that the data will move from one place to another place and applying transformations, processing is nothing but applying transformations. Did we get this definition now? ETL. We extract the data, we transform the data, that is processing, removing the item content, aggregating the data, summing up values, whatever be the transformation rules depending on the requirements. We transform it here and then load it into the data warehouse. Does it make sense where we see it right now? Everybody? So this is where we use ETL most of the times. Loading the data from OLTP systems to OLAP systems. To do this, we have tools, that is Informatica. Is that clear?
Is it that we do this processing or
Developers do it.
Developers
You will test this process. I'm explaining the process right now. I'm not talking anything from a QA side. This is all the process that happens from a data perspective. Data will be moved from OLTP systems to OLAP systems. So when they move the data from this place to this place, developers write that code of moving the data from here to here. You will go test that code using whatever you learned in SQL. And SQL is the only way to test this one. You have to write SQL queries, only then you can test it. This is manual testing.
So we have this testing basically, even at least a part of it in the regular testing, right? I mean, you would have database. This comes under database testing.
Okay.
I'm asking.
I know there are a bunch of terms out there which says database tester, backend tester, UI. All I know is we test data from source to target. I don't worry about the terms. To answer that question, we have data from OLTP to OLAP. This is done by a data warehouse database tester. Your source is database, your target is database. Is that right? Is that right or wrong? What is source and target? Wherever we pick the data, that is source. Wherever we load the data, that is target. Right? Now, after we load the data into OLAP systems, that is from data warehouse, let's say, we move the data to various downstreams. I mean, the data in the data warehouse, does the CEO of the company come in and write SQL queries to understand what data we have? I don't think he'll do it. He just need a printout, a report saying that these are the numbers, right? So in order to do that, we generate reports out of data warehouse data. Agree? So numbers that you see on the reports are target. Your source is data warehouse. This is where you pick the data from. Agree? Everybody? Is that right? You're testing the data that you see in front end with the data that is in back end database. There's a term like this, right? Back-end tester. You're testing the reports. This one is also called BI tester, if it's a BI report tool. So this is done by a person called database tester. This is done by a person called back-end tester or BI tester. If there is a single person who does both of that, is called a data warehouse tester.
Essentially the same thing. Comparing the source with the target. Just
Comparing the
where-
source with the target.
So very big the source and what target is that's the only here.
I'll call myself a QA, that's it. I don't put in any of that junk out there. I'm a QA. I can test any stuff. If you want what specific they call, this is what they call. If you're testing everything in database, your source is database, target is database, you call a database tester. If the source is database, target is reports, these are the nominations. If there is a single person who does both of them, he's called a data warehouse tester.
So he would be exclusively in SQL.
No, he will deal with reports too, right?
Database tester exclusively in SQL.
Yes. Okay? Is that clear? Now, let's look at the ETL tool. Yes? Ready? You guys? You want it tomorrow?
Introduction.
So everybody understood, right? We are moving the data from one place to another place. That is what we are trying to do. The end of the class, even then, I'm doing the same thing. I'm moving the data from one place to another place. All I as a QA will be doing is testing the process that the developers did in moving the data from one place to another place. Okay, so before I explain the tool, there are 5 mandatory columns that I want to show. Come on, Excel. So there are documents that you need to be aware of as a ETL tester. As a ETL tester, you should be aware of a document called BRD. What is this? What do we have in this?
All the requirements from the customer.
All the requirements from the client or the customer. A higher level requirements. Will not have detailed information in this. It's pretty high level, saying that they need this. These are the end requirements. That is what we have in business requirement document. There is a document called mapping document. And this is created by a BA, business analyst. Mapping document or requirements analyst. Source to target mapping document, STM. System requirement document. Etc. Each company has a different name, and there are a bunch of other naming conventions for it. The famous ones are mapping document, system requirement document, and source to target mapping document. STM is source to target mapping document. What is it?
The same as software requirements.
What is software requirements?
Technical requirements.
Technical requirements.
So the system requirement document, how is that, that is a system analyst? How's that?
Typing who's doing it. This person called, there'll be a team called mapping team, or he's called mapper, or information analyst, IA, or system analyst. There are a bunch of naming conventions again who actually does this. Okay, so we as a QA need these two documents. As a developer, he needs these two documents. So the process, I'm going to tell you guys the process, what it is. Everything is part of ETL class. Process. The BAs and the information analysts come up with these two documents. First document that they come up with is this BRD document. That is where they get the higher level requirements from the client. Once they get the high level requirements from the client, they will share this document with this team. This team will understand the requirements, whatever we have in BRD. Based on that requirement, they will create a technical document which is called a mapping document, system requirements document, or any of these names. They'll create a technical document. When I say technical document, it again deals with tables, columns, transformations. That is technical. This one is not technical. I can say move the data. So I gave you guys a question today where first name of the name to be in capital letters, second half of the name to be in small letters, right? So in BRD document, let's say I put that as a requirement. In BRD document, they'll say that I need first three letters to be, or first half of the name to be in capital letters, second half to be in small letters. That is the requirement that I'll see in BRD. In mapping document, I'll have transformation to do it. That is first half, length of, not going to tell you the query. So the detailed SQL query, they'll not write the query. They'll tell the logic, how we can come up with the first half, how we can come up with the second half. In table value. So what are the columns that we need to pick? ename, right? So ename column, they give the target column where it should be stored. I'm going to show up what columns we have. I'm going to show the sample document. But does it make sense? So they move the data from one place to another place. So let's try writing that logic. The main columns that we have as part of mapping document or STM is source column. We have everything in already in Krishna Training website. I'm going to show you that place too. These are the 5 mandatory columns. There'll be a bunch of other columns associated with this document. So a document will be sitting out there in Excel sheet with these columns. This is a technical document. If you look at these columns, do you guys understand what these columns explain? What is a source table? In order to, I just gave you a requirement, right? Ename column. We'll be picking the column from, picking the data from, the source data is EMP table. What is the column that I'm using? What is the target? Let's say I'll be storing it in some random table. After loading it, I'll trgt target ename, right? And transformation is that first have to be not writing the logic here. Capital letters. And last half. So this one will explain how we need to approach in order to load this column. So what is this column? This table explains us. So this is the target column that we'll eventually load. If we want to load in this target table, this column, we have to pick data from employee tables, ename column, and apply this rule. Does it make sense? So in order to load this column in this table, I need to pick data from this column, which is sitting in EMP table, and apply this transformation and then load it. So let me open up this document in Krishna Training. Come on. That's okay. Remind me tomorrow. I'll see if I can download the document from another computer and show it to you. So this is the type of table that a mapping teams will come up with. You don't do this job. You will have this table directly like this, which is loaded with all the target table columns. How are they loaded? Technically written. This is called technical document. Can you find the difference between the BRD and this one? BRD will have a single word, a sentence that explains the requirement. But here, you'll get the table information, column information, and the transformations that I'm applying. All the rules that I'm applying is called a transformation. Okay. Now, if the developers, the mapping teams, after coming up with this document, let me get back to the process. Okay, they came up with this document. Based on this document, the mapping team came up with these documents. Agree? Now, after they done with coming up with these two documents, they will give, this literally happens, they will give a presentation. Who will? They means business analysts or the people who created this system document. They will give a presentation to development team and the QA team, explaining what they have in the documents. What are the business rules? What are the business requirements? Right? And how to achieve those requirements based on this document. Okay?
Is walk through the same thing? Is walk through the same thing?
Yes. They will give you a, you mean?
The concept of walkthrough, that so they're
Yeah.
giving you the information.
Then,
not
yeah,
the
that is
technical,
walkthrough.
What the product is.
Yes, it's a walkthrough. So now they will give a complete presentation of what they have as part of requirements and what they have in technical document. So we as a QA, they as a developer will look at that presentation. That's when the process starts. Developers will start developing the code based on what they understand from these documents and the presentation, right? They develop the code. We as a QA will try to read the same documents, understand the same documents, understand the presentation that we got, build our test cases. because when they are developing, we cannot test it. They have to finish the development, only then we can test it, right? So the developers will develop the code. When they are developing the code, we will come up with our test cases. Okay? So when we come up with our test cases, by the time we finish writing all our test cases for all the scenarios, every single requirement should have test cases. We create a document called Requirement Traceability Matrix, RTM. There is a document called RTM that we come up with. Yes. Requirements Traceability Matrix. So all this document does is, this document will have list of every single requirement that you see in BRD. Okay? It will have list of every single requirement that you have in BRD, and so the rows will be requirements and the columns will be test cases, or the other way too. We can do it either way. Okay? All you do is, every requirement should have a test case. You create a matrix to find out internet. Type in Google whenever you go back home, RTM. We have documents in Krishna Training, but we don't have internet right now. RTM, you'll see a big box, a matrix type of box where you have requirements on one side, test cases on other side.
Whenever you write your test cases, then where is the use of the ER diagrams? You could do the ER diagrams?
Can't hear you.
No, whenever you write the test cases, right?
Yes.
You would be depending on the mapping document, or you look for the ER, ER diagrams.
You have to depend on ER diagrams too, because not every mapping document will have you complete details about the tables. They're going to give you what logic is that applied for that particular column, but how do you join tables? They don't give it.
I have my hotspot on. If you want to connect, you can connect to the internet.
Okay. What is it?
The second one. Capital L, I, N.
Everything capital?
No, just capital L, and lowercase I N, M Y A, V I R, then number 1. You want to try that again? Capital L, I N, M Y A, V I R, 1. Oh no, actually the one I deleted it.
Okay, that's okay. So RTM is a document where you have matrix to identify and see if every requirement has enough test cases covered with it. Okay, so every requirement has to be thoroughly tested, right? So before we start our testing process, looking at all the documents, we have to come up with our test cases. Agree? That process clear, right? So when we have a requirement, we have to make sure that we have enough test cases for it to test it thoroughly. So this requirement traceability matrix will help us to identify that what requirement, how many number of test cases are there for that particular requirement. Okay? Try to read some documents about it. You will understand. But when we have the internet, I'm going to show you some more stuff about RTM. But all you need to know is requirements traceability matrix, because people will ask you in interviews, can you create RTM? You can say yes. What do we have in RTM? We trace the test cases with the requirements. It is a document, or it is a place, it is a matrix where we trace all the test cases, all our test cases based on requirements to see if every single requirement is covered and tested thoroughly. All right. Now, once we come up with our test cases, by the time we finish writing our test cases, developers will be finished with developing the code. That means they say that we've written a code where the data can be moved from one place to another place, from source to target. Right? Once they are done with the code, you will be executing all your test cases one by one on the developed code. That is what we as a QA do. Make sense? Yes or no? So if you find any defects, that is all a different story. But overall process wise, that's when we come. So they have to finish up with BRD document, they have to finish up with these system requirement documents. Once they are done, they have to give a presentation to both QA and developer. Once they are done with that, they will start developing. By the time when they start developing, we as a QA will start writing our test cases. As soon as they finish the development, we'll be done with writing our test cases. Sometimes we'll also be done with writing test scripts. Test scripts is nothing but SQL queries.
Also mean automation. Scripts can also mean automation.
Yes. Okay. Lot of theory.
So what do you write in Excel?
Generally Excel or Word document. So to get started with the tool, Informatica. So Informatica is a tool. So whatever we are doing as an Informatica, I'm doing it from a QA's perspective. One thing I want to make it clear is I'm not teaching development here for Informatica. Okay? Informatica development is a whole different picture. It's a whole different course. Here we as a QA have special tasks, specific tasks that as a QA you have to do on an ETL tool. When you're in ETL testing process, all you do is writing SQL scripts, testing the application based on database. But on top of that, there's an additional step that you have to do on ETL tool. That is in Informatica. That is what we'll be covering in the class. Okay? So let me show you guys to open the tool first. So in order to open the tool, first you need to start the services again. The same way you started Oracle Server, right? Every time you log into Toad, you have to, in order to access the database, you started Oracle Server. Similarly, you have something called Informatica. Click on Start Informatica.
This is how it would be even in real time, where they'll have separate servers and stuff.
You have to start the services for sure, but I'll show you where. For now, it is here. Tomorrow, get ready. We're gonna move the data from one place to another place using Informatica. We're gonna go step by step. I want you guys to do it with me. We'll move the data from one place to another place.
When is the test? The test?
First, practice it. Next week, probably.
Yes.
Yeah. So it gets started. So if in companies you don't see the Krishna training page, there is no way that you find a page where you start your Informatica services. The way you have to go is go to Start. There'll be a folder for Informatica. So it's called Informatica Power Center. The version is 8.6.
What is the latest one, correct?
9, I believe. 9.1 or something. Okay, so there is a folder for services. If you do not have this Krishna training page in your company, go to Informatica Services, and here you have Start Informatica Services. Right? You click on this one, it will do the same job that this page is doing here. I'm going to show you the process again. How do we go? So every time you start, before you start Informatica, you have to start the services. In order to start the services, go to all programs. Come on today. And go to Informatica folder. In Informatica folder, you'll have two tabs again. Go to services, in services, click on Start Informatica Services. I'm going to do it again tomorrow morning, this one. We're going to do it one by one, every step. You click on this one, it will start the services. Similarly, if you want to stop it, there is something called Stop Informatica Services. These are the only two things that we needed in Services tab. Next, go to Client. So Informatica consists of 4 tools. In Informatica, inside Informatica, there are 4 subtypes. Power Center Designer, Repository Manager, Workflow Manager, and Workflow Monitor. I'm going to go in detail about each of these stuff, but there are 4 types in Informatica: Power Center Designer, Repository Manager, Workflow Manager, and Workflow Monitor. All you need to remember is this nice designs, DRWM. Those are the 4 different types. Okay? So we as a QA will, most of the times, if somebody is assigned a ETL project, most of the time will be sitting with Workflow Manager and Workflow Monitor. As a QA, development work will be done in Designer, Power Center Designer. Power Center Designer, there are 4 parts, right? Power Center Designer is the place where the development of the code is done. Okay, and Workflow Manager and Workflow Monitor are the places where you see how the data is moving from one place to another place. Monitor, what do we do in Monitor? Monitoring, right? We look at what's happening. That is what. So Workflow Monitor, workflow is a term in Informatica. When you run a workflow, it moves the data. It activates the data to move from one place to another place. So every tool will have different terminology. We are talking about Informatica here. Informatica, it's called a workflow. So when you run a workflow, it moves the data from one place to another place. You cannot run the code. You can run the workflow. Code is built and code has to be embedded into a workflow. Workflows are run. Okay, there are a bunch of elements here, new elements, but you'll get used to it. So all I'm doing here is, in Power Center Designer, we design the code, and that code, whatever we design, is called a mapping. So there are different terminologies that you need to learn when you're in Informatica. Okay, the code that you built in Informatica, Power Center Designer, is called a mapping, and that mapping will be embedded or stored into a workflow, which is in Workflow Manager. Just write down the terms. Don't worry about. I'm going to show step by step. You'll learn when we do it.
Can you repeat last name?
What is that?
Can you repeat whatever you just said?
Yeah. So Power Center Designer is a place where you develop the code, and that code is called a mapping. And the mapping developed in Power Center Designer will be embedded or stored in a workflow. And this process is done in Workflow Manager. So once we embed the workflow in mapping into a workflow in Workflow Manager, we have to run the workflow to move the data. So workflows are run to move the data from one place to another place.
Once we embed the mapping into the workflow manager,
Mhm. We have to start running the workflows.
With me.
Yes.
So for make workflow, by using the workflow manager to make workflow, we don't do that. Development, right?
What is it?
I think to use workflow manager,
Uh-huh.
who use it? We use it, or we just say that to open that. We say something there, develop it.
You will as a QA will be doing based on workflows. You don't do any development work, but QA will run the workflows.
Okay.
Okay, so where do we start? We started with a developed code in Power Center Designer, and that is called a mapping, and mapping is stored into a workflow in Power Center Workflow Manager. In Manager, when we run a workflow, the data is moved from source to target, right? So in order to look at how the data is being moved when we run a workflow, we go to Workflow Monitor. Monitor is a place where we monitor how the data is being moved from one place to another place. That is the last step.
What is the repository?
I'll tell you. Okay, is this clear until now? So the last part that we have is repository manager. So that is dealt completely by the developers, where in order to create the database and everything, all the metadata in order to start the development is done in repository manager. That's because Informatica is a tool. I agree? And you have to connect your database to the tool. It doesn't connect automatically. You have to connect whatever database that you have with the tool. Yes? So in order to connect, if you remember in SQL, this is stored, right? In Toad, in order to connect, I go to this place and I give all these details in order to connect the tool to the database. Is that right? Similarly, Informatica tool doesn't recognize the database by itself. You have to connect the database in order to do a development and save your work. So all the connection, database connections, everything is done in repository manager.
So that's basically what it's taking care of the development.
Yeah. We never log in as a QA into repository manager. You don't need to. Designer, yes, sometimes you might have to look at how the code is being developed. But all we as a QA 90% of the times will be sitting in Power Center, Workflow Manager and Workflow Monitor.
So metadata, what is it?
So metadata is nothing but column information. So this is called metadata. Do we see data here in the table? This is no table data, right? This is all metadata. This is the employee table data. Metadata is nothing but all the column names, their properties, everything is called metadata. Okay?
So, what is repository manager?
I told you, right? We give all the database connections, everything in repository manager. So we can also create some metadata information there. So there are a bunch of other options, but it's development, Informatica development. We don't need that complex level. Okay. So let me click on Power Center Design. I'm just going to show the tool right now. I'm not going to discuss anything, how it looks, those type of stuff. So let me click on that Power Center Designer. As I already started my services, it's going to help me log in now. So if I do not create my database connections and everything, I do not see anything in here in repositories. So when I log in, this is my tool, Informatica Power Center Designer. This is the home page. This is where I land. I'm still not connected. I need to connect. And these are all the databases that I have to connect. If I have a bunch of other repositories that are created in Repository Manager, I could have seen a lot of other repositories. There are only one repository. We have only one database in our Krishna training thing. So we have one database created here in Repository Manager. Right click on this one. So this is a tool. Can you see here? Notations. R is Repository Manager. D is Designer. W is Workflow Manager. M is Monitor. Workflow Monitor. Okay? So I'm in Designer. That's why D is highlighted. Now, in order to connect, I'll right click on it and click on Connect. All I did is right click on the repository, click on Connect. If all your connections in your laptop are perfectly fine, then you'll get to this window. Username and password are same. Connect. So when I connect to the window, I open up a bunch of folders here. Right? So this is how the tool looks. Is that clear? I'm not going to go in details about the tool right now. We'll do it fresh tomorrow morning. But this is how we log into Informatica Power Center Designer. Go and try and see if you guys are okay loading up this up till here. If you have problems logging in, try talk to Krishna once. He'll tell you if there is a problem. I want everybody to come to the screen before you come to class tomorrow.
You have the password.
Administrator, same password, whatever you have for the username, copy and paste it. Before you come to the class, I want you guys to be here tomorrow. You're already there? Good. Close it now, come back tomorrow morning and do the same stuff. All right?